Teresa Larkin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Teresa, tell us, you are the Vice Chairman of Pregnancy Care Alliance of Massachusetts. What is this organization and what does it do?
So, the Pregnancy Care Alliance is a group of pregnancy resource centers in the state of Massachusetts that have elected to come together to better serve the women and families in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
And give us a picture, let's say we're not familiar with pregnancy centers. Give us a picture of what it's like if you're a pregnant mother that walks through the door of one of these pregnancy centers.
Well, if you're a pregnant mother who walks through the doors from one of our centers, the first thing you're going to feel is love and care and compassion and no judgment. And people that are there to hear your story, to focus on you as an individual, and to hear what is going on in your life. Different pregnancy centers offer different services, but they all offer that same caring, compassionate opportunity for women to just know that they're in a safe place to receive help and support.
Now, I've reported on a number of pregnancy centers in the area. One of the ones that I've really focused in on is Capitol Hill Pregnancy Center here in DC. And I noticed when I went in there and got a little tour that the basement is absolutely overflowing with diapers and clothing. Is that standard in pregnancy centers?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the same thing for all of our centers. We have the same, we probably have a very similar basement in one of our offices, just full of baby clothes and diapers and toiletries and everything that you can think a mom would need.
And where does that come from?
It comes from donations. So, again, all the services that are provided through pregnancy centers are offered to our clients and to the women and families at no cost to them. So, everything that they receive from us doesn't cost them anything and is supported and supplied by multitudes of people, citizens and family, people in the Commonwealth who love what we do and want to support moms in need. And so they're all donated. They're all donated.
It's amazing. So this is just houses full of donations for babies and moms.
Correct.
What about dads? Do you guys ever help dads at all?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why we said women and families. Dads are a pivotal part of the picture, and so they're always welcome to join. We actually encourage them to be part of the whole process. Absolutely.
So tell me about the kind of people that work at pregnancy centers, because I would really like to give our listeners a good picture of, not just what is going on in these centers, but who is running them and what these types of people are like.
Well, most of the people that are running the centers, really are full of compassion. Many of them have walked where some of our patients have walked. Many of them have struggled themselves and understand. Many of them just have a huge heart to help and, at the same time, provide a professional opportunity for women to be heard and not, I think one of the differences between like a state run social agency and the women that work at pregnancy centers is that we don't make them feel ashamed or embarrassed that they're coming for help. We encourage them. We the things that we give them are designed to bless them and encourage them and help them. And I think that's a huge difference. Is that's often overlooked. That's the attitude and the mindset of a pregnancy center worker.
And you say women, it sounds like a lot of the women or a lot of the people that are running these organizations are women.
Yes, yes, it is. There are men, but for the most part, I would say most pregnancy centers are staffed with women.
It's something that we often hear, and as a reporter, that I often see from left-wing groups and pro-abortion advocates is this messaging that pregnancy centers exist to shame and deter women from getting abortions.
Hmm.
What would your response to that be?
Well, I think the difference is that we believe that women deserve to know and to have true options, and to know the answers. Women really in unplanned pregnancies, they're seeking answers. They're seeking information. They're seeking help. And so the help and the information they need is designed to equip them to make a good decision, to make an informed decision, not to shame them. As I shared, our goal in helping people is not to make them feel ashamed that they may have needs or they may have concerns, but that they're worthy and deserve all the information that they need.
So, how many women would you say this Pregnancy Center Alliance has served? Do you have an idea of how many women and babies?
Well, we just formed, so our data is from 2022. We're working on the 2023 data now, but only out of 13 centers, we have 13 centers that are represented by PCAL right now. And we served over 4,000 women just in 2022 alone. We provided a million point two of free medical services, which would have been pregnancy testing, ultrasounds, STI testing, vitamins, consultations with medical professionals, and then over $700,000 of diapers and clothing. And we think probably those estimates are on the low side as well.
Wow.
Yes, that's just one year.
Now, that's a lot of services. How have your efforts been met by the state?
Um, the state has tried to damage the reputation of our centers by accusing us of exactly what you had said earlier, of shaming women into not having an abortion. But the reality is that we really believe that women do have a choice, and having no choice but abortion is not a choice. And so the radical, it's kind of interesting. We used to be called pro-life centers, and then kind of crisis pregnancy centers, and now we're anti-abortion centers. So there's something going on where they're just sort of digging in their heels and trying to highlight what we don't do as opposed to what we actually do.
Right, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of focus on what you do.
Exactly. Exactly.
Why do you think that is?
That's a good question. I know that we have invited our governor, our attorney general, our senators to come and see for themselves what we do. Unfortunately, they have not taken us up on that opportunity, but we're going to still ask. It seems to be driven, frankly, by a radical pro abortion rights groups that just want to continue to promote abortion as the only option for women in unplanned pregnancy. And so there's just a one message that they're trying to deliver, as opposed to focusing on, if they really were pro women and they really trusted women, they would trust them to get the information they need to make the best decision for them.
Right. Now, I've been learning recently, I believe there's a network of around 3,000 pregnancy centers around the United States. I don't know if that figure is accurate, but we've seen a lot of uh, rather hateful and uh, targeted rhetoric directed towards these pregnancy centers lately. What impact do you think that has on your work?
We were also attacked. We right after the Dobbs decision, a few centers in our state, we were tagged with the famous Jane's Revenge. If abortions aren't safe, neither are you. So we've had people come after us in our centers. We're
And
determined.
I'm gonna interrupt you there too. When you say we were attacked, can you explain for our listeners, what type of attack? Because I believe you're talking about a physical attack on these
I'm
centers.
sorry. Our buildings were attacked. We were spray painted. One of our centers had windows broken. One of our PCAL members, threats with, again, like graffiti. So not physical threats to people, but certainly physical threats to the building. Buildings were
Right.
destroyed. And again, a message like, if abortions aren't safe, neither are you, it's
Wow.
very threatening. And so, that's the type of attitude that many of them have. And again, not focusing on what we do, but on the fact that we don't provide abortions. That seems to be their big problem.
So the animosity towards you, as you're saying, is not because you help women in need, but because you will not help them to abort their babies.
Correct.
Now, when you face these attacks, I'm curious, how many of your centers were physically attacked and graffitied with this type of rhetoric?
I believe about 5 or 6.
5 or 6. So, for the women that are running these centers, does that scare them?
It gave us a little pause, I will admit. However, no, we're determined. most of us, again, we're Christians. Most of us are believers, and we trust God to protect us, and so we basically said we're not going to be deterred. We're not going to be scared off. Women need us. Women need me and men. I don't want to keep forgetting about the men, but women and men and children and babies need us, and so we're going to
Right.
keep going.
Now, one of the latest developments in this war on pregnancy centers that we've been talking about, because I think it's two pronged, right? We're talking about activist efforts to actually physically hurt the centers, and then more state level efforts
Hmm.
to shut you down. One of the latest developments is this new education campaign against pregnancy centers that's being run by the Massachusetts Department of Health and these activists. Can you share a little bit with us about what this education campaign is?
The education campaign really exists about warnings against, again, anti-abortion clinics that do not go to these centers. So they've named us all on government websites and saying you need to avoid these places. These centers, will lie to you, deceive you. We've called it the $1 million smear campaign because it's being funded with $1 million of taxpayer funding in Massachusetts, to
Wow.
attack pregnancy centers by using billboards, sandwich boards, social media, YouTube, TikTok, a pretty widespread campaign that is being funded, again, mostly just warning women to not go to any of our centers.
Wow. Now this is a $1 million smear campaign, as you say. Do you think that that plays into it all, the attacks on pregnancy centers we've seen? When we see this rhetoric saying that you're deterring women and lying to women, does that escalate the attacks on these centers?
This smear campaign was just announced, I believe, 2 weeks ago or a week ago. So it's yet to seem, but clearly it opens the door. Obviously, if we were attacked 2 years ago when the Dobbs decision came down, we're preparing for the possibility of future attacks. Absolutely.
Especially around the anniversary of the Dobbs decision, which is on June 24th, I believe.
Yes, yes. All our centers had to put in security cameras. One of our main clinics has existed. I've been there for over 20 years, never ever had to do anything like that. But, we've all had to put in security cameras and increase our security, measures just to be prepared.
And what has the response been from state and local authorities to these new dangers presented to pregnancy centers?
Silence,
Silence.
silence. No,
Wow.
no. Um, no concern, no, again, we've invited, to come and see and address, the governor, when she was attorney general, put a consumer advisory warning on the government website about pregnancy centers, accusing, of us of deceptive advertising, lying to women, all sorts of things that remains up there to this day. And we've made numerous attempts over these 2 years to meet with them and dialogue, because these accusations are unwarranted. We did a freedom of information request to find out, gee, women coming out in droves against pregnancy centers, and found over a 40-year period, just in Massachusetts, there were only 3 complaints against a pregnancy center, and 2 of them were by abortion. They weren't even in the state. So you're talking
Wow.
about 40 years of a clean record of helping women with no issues, nothing that has precipitated this
Wow.
attack. And I don't know what other industry could have a claim to that, as well as a 97% approval rating from our patients, and our clients that we serve. That's
Wow.
national overall. Like you said, the 3,000 pregnancy centers is, a 97% or higher satisfaction rate from the women themselves that have been served.
Have you ever had a woman come back and say, I wish that you all didn't help me to save my baby?
Never.
What kind of things do they say when they do come back?
They're so grateful. I mean, that is one of the most joyful, I have to tell you, experiences, is when someone comes back with their baby. I'll just give you a quick story. I was walking out of the office one day, going to my car, and a woman came up to me and said, "Do you work in that pregnancy center?" Now, this was sort of right after Dobbs. So I was a little nervous about how to respond. And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh my gosh, do you have a minute? I want you to meet my daughter. She's a preschool teacher at the program right next door to us. And I'm so grateful because I came to your center and I had her. And she brought me to meet her daughter, who was 17, a beautiful
Wow.
girl. And she was telling the daughter, she was the first person that saw you on the ultrasound machine."
Wow.
So we hear stories like that all the time. And that's the stories that aren't told, to the government
Yeah.
officials, that aren't told, the countless women that and men that come in so grateful, so proud, so happy with their children.
Wow. So, if let's just say people like New York's Governor Kathy Hochul, or Andrew Cuomo, I know was part of these efforts to
Hmm.
shut down pregnancy centers, or the governor of Massachusetts. Let's say they got their way and all of these pregnancy centers were shut down.
Hmm.
What would that landscape look like?
That would be very unfortunate because the women, as again, you heard our numbers, so you're cutting off thousands of dollars of support for women and families. You're cutting off an opportunity for them. Like I said, many of the women that are served, you know, may not even be thinking about abortion, but they feel that they might have to because of their circumstances. So if you shut these centers down off, you're denying a person that just would have her baby if she had support, if she knew that resources were available, if she had someone to talk to, and to safety. We serve women a lot that are being, not a ton of women, but 20%, 25% of the women we serve in our centers are trying to escape sex trafficking, are trying to escape domestic violence, are trying to escape drug addiction. We just had a girl in yesterday. We were able to get her into a drug program because we have
Wow.
connections. We have connections with all people. We know women that run safe houses. We know women that run addiction homes, domestic violence support. So all of those things that are often a driver to abortion are gone for these women. They're gone.
Wow. Wow. So, if you had the opportunity to speak with the governor of Massachusetts and to make a case for pregnancy centers, what would you say?
I would say pretty much what I just said is that if you truly support women and you believe women deserve good care, information, support, resources, encouragement, then you would support pregnancy centers. I mean, the governor, Elizabeth Warren, all these, and they should support the work that we do because we're benefiting and helping the citizens of our state that they are representing.
And in the same way that these leftist activists are kind of grouping up to help each other to direct more vitriol at pregnancy centers, do you see any kind of national support from pro-lifers or pro-life politicians in supporting pregnancy centers? And if not, why?
Not in general. I think you have the pro-life states. You'll hear senators coming out and supporting, but on a national level, not really. And that is hard for us because we are in a place where we don't have any support from the mainstream media, from our elected officials, from our obviously now the Department of Public Health. We don't have any support, and so it would be wonderful if we could get more of a national understanding for people to realize that some states are doing great. They're helping women with they
Yeah.
have abortion restrictions, they're offering, but some of us are really going through the fire.
Yeah. And I do want to circle back before we conclude to the conversation we had a little earlier about how this rhetoric might be escalating attacks on pregnancy centers. When you hear Elizabeth Warren, for example, saying that pregnancy centers are dangerous and are hurting women, uh, does that direct more vitriol towards you and your colleagues who are trying to help women in pregnancy centers?
Absolutely. Even in the Department of Public Health statement, he called our centers a public health threat. So
Wow.
again, what is that going to do for radical, pro-abortion extremists? Of course, it's going to give them a license to attack. Right now, it's maybe bad Google reviews or things like that. But it just certainly emboldens them. And the doctors and nurses that, their reputations, their licenses are on the line in their lives, that,
Mhm.
between their colleagues, possibly, or where they work, telling them they don't want them to work there anymore if they're pro-life,
Mhm.
it opens the door to things that, it's like that loose thread. You pull that thread and now you've got this big mess of yarn, right? And
Right.
that's sort of what we're seeing is the ramifications are so, not only will we not be able to help women, but the safety of our doctors and nurses, the safety of our staff, those things are all very real. They're very real.
They're very real, and it's so important that all of you are able to remain safe as you do such important work. Well, do you have any concluding message for people who might be watching this that are trying to think of ways that they can support pregnancy centers or get the word out that these centers are actually doing really important work?
Right. Contact legislators. That's one of the big things that, and we hear it too from even the pro life legislators in our state that say, we just don't hear from people enough. We don't hear from people enough. The other side is constantly delivering their message. And, pro life people tend to be, less engaged. And that's what we need. Like, they need to let their voices be heard. We actually do have a petition, going, that, to send to our, that says, please, show your support for pregnancy centers. That's, they need to, that would be the most important thing, I think, is for people to communicate with their state and local legislators and government officials, write op-eds into the newspapers to, to try to correct the record. And, we're doing a lot of that now, trying to get our clients to speak for us, because that's, their voice is undeniable. When you take
Right.
a woman that's sitting there with her child and what she's accomplished because she came to a pregnancy center, that's undeniable proof.
It is. It really is. Well, Teresa, thank you so much for joining us. We're so grateful for you for the work that you do and for sharing your story.
Thank you so much.